The Mercy Line. Welcome to MC Noctis, where every shadow has a story. Tonight, that shadow is speaking through an empty frequency in the voice of someone you buried. No one in Vale believed the dead could use a radio until a dead woman saved 22 children. At 3:03 on a Tuesday morning, every radio in town switched itself to 103.7 FM. June Ward, who had been buried for 8 years, told her husband that the school bus would cross Harrow Bridge at 7:42 and that the bridge would collapse at 7:43. Sheriff Ward stopped the bus with 63 seconds to spare. The next night, a dead coal miner described the exact air pocket where 2 missing boys were still breathing. By Friday, people had stopped calling 103.7 the dead frequency. They called it the Mercy Line. My mother called me that afternoon. She said my sister Emma had spoken to her. Emma drowned 14 years earlier. We never found her body. According to my mother, she had been waiting inside the static all that time. She said I had to return to Vale before Sunday, when the line would open long enough for every grieving person in town to speak with the dead. My name is Jonah Reed. I analyze disputed recordings for criminal investigations. I know how grief changes what people hear. I know how easily a damaged speaker can turn noise into a familiar voice. I drove home intending to expose a hoax. On my first night back, Emma spoke through a radio with its power cord lying on the floor. She told me where to find the tin fox we had hidden as children. No one else knew it existed. Then she told me something about the night she died, something my mother had concealed for 14 years. The truth broke open every memory I had of my family. It almost made me obey her. By Sunday morning, 12 people were seated inside the old emergency transmitter above Mercy Dam. Each was waiting for a dead relative to ask the same question. Can you hear me? Every time a living person answered yes, another safety system in the dam went dark. At 3:17, the spillway gates began to open. The reservoir was directly above the town, and while I fought to close the gates, Emma whispered through the loudspeakers that I could either save Vale or hear my sister say she loved me one last time. I chose the town. That is why I will never hear another human voice. It is also why the Mercy Line has started sending me messages it knows I can read. Vale sits in a narrow West Virginia valley beneath a concrete dam and a reservoir black enough to hide the moon. I grew up there with my mother Ruth and my younger sister Emma. I left at 18, 2 years after the flood took Emma, and learned to make a living proving that voices on recordings belonged to the living. The town looked different when I returned. White ribbons covered the telephone poles. Handwritten signs thanked people who had been dead for years. Thank you, June, for saving our children. Thank you, Mr. Bell, for bringing the boys home. Outside the old emergency radio tower, residents unloaded car batteries, copper cable, and electrical relays. Sheriff Silas Ward supervised from the gate. Since his wife's warning saved the school bus, no one questioned his authority over the line. My mother had 3 radios on the dining table. All were tuned to 103.7. One had no batteries. One had no antenna. The oldest had not worked since my father dropped it down the basement stairs. They all wake at 3:03, she said. Who operates the transmitter? No one. The station was decommissioned in 1986. I asked about the equipment being carried up the hill. Mother called them acts of gratitude. After helping someone, the line requested a small kindness: a battery, a length of wire, a relay from an unused alarm box. Sheriff Ward said the dead needed help strengthening the signal for Sunday. And everyone simply obeys? I asked. Her face hardened. 22 children came home because June Ward obeyed. On the mantel stood Emma's school photograph, 9 years old, front tooth missing, hair cut badly because she had tried doing it herself. Beside the frame lay a notebook filled with questions my mother wanted to ask her. Was she frightened when the water came? Had she found Dad? Did she know Mum never stopped looking? The final page contained only one sentence, written again and again until the pen tore the paper. What must I do to bring you home? I closed the notebook. At 3:02 that morning, my mother sat before the radios and held my sister's photograph against her chest. At 3:03, every light in the house dimmed. The radio without a power cord began to breathe. Static filled the dining room. Beneath it came dozens of whispers, each speaking at a different speed. My recording equipment showed a clean, empty carrier wave. According to the screen, nothing but static was leaving those speakers. Then a girl said my name. Jonah? My mother covered her mouth. The voice was 9 years old. Slight lisp, breathless habit of rushing through the first half of a sentence. It sounded exactly as Emma had sounded on the last home video we ever made. I told myself a skilled impersonator could have studied family recordings. The fox is still behind the chimney brick, the voice said. You promised we would come back for him. When Emma and I were children, we stole a tin, wind-up fox from a church rummage sale. Afraid Mum would make us return it, we loosened a brick behind the attic chimney and hid the toy inside. I had never told anyone. I ran upstairs. The brick came free beneath my fingers. Behind it lay the tin fox, its orange paint blistered with age. When I returned, Mother was crying into the radio. Can you hear me? Emma asked her. Yes, baby, I hear you. The static deepened when she answered. Every radio in the room exhaled at once. Emma told us the Sunday broadcast required 12 witnesses, 12 living people willing to answer the dead. Mother had been selected as the final witness. I asked what would happen when the line opened. No more goodbyes, Emma said. Then the voice changed. For less than a second, it became deep enough to rattle the windows. Bring the North Flood Relay to the tower. Mother glanced at me, as if hoping I had not heard. The girl's voice returned. Please, Jonah. I'm cold where the water put me. At 3:17, the radios died. I replayed my recording. Emma's voice was there now, although the waveform had shown nothing during the broadcast. Behind every word was a soft mechanical click, repeating 11 times per second. I magnified the sound. It was not a relay. It was teeth closing. The next morning, Mother admitted she had already promised to bring the North Flood Relay to the tower. That relay controlled one of Mercy Dam's emergency warning systems. I called the county engineer. He said the North Relay was obsolete, but still functional. Removing it would disable one of 3 redundant alarms. He had not authorized anyone to touch it. Before I could confront Sheriff Ward, the Mercy Line performed another miracle. 8-year-old Luke Danner disappeared near an abandoned mine. Search crews had spent 6 hours combing the woods when every truck radio switched to 103.7. Luke's dead grandfather gave directions to a collapsed ventilation shaft half a mile outside the search area. I followed the crews with Mara Cole, a paramedic I'd known since high school. 3 years earlier, Mara's 6-year-old son Caleb died in a house fire. She had never heard his voice on the line. Maybe it only calls people who can help, she said, or people it can use. We found the shaft buried beneath weeds and shale. There was no reason anyone should have known Luke was inside, yet when rescuers broke through, the boy was alive in a pocket no wider than a coffin. The crowd began praying. I stared at the black opening and felt my certainty weaken. A hoax could fake a voice. It could not easily place a missing child beneath 30 feet of collapsed rock. Then Mara asked where Paul Danner was. Paul was Luke's uncle. He had entered the woods with the first search team. Everyone assumed he had gone home after the rescue. His truck remained beside the road. At 3:03 that night, Luke's family gathered around a radio to thank the dead grandfather. A different voice answered. "Luke is safe," it said. "Can you hear me?" Luke's father went white. It was Paul. No one had reported him dead. The voice asked the family to carry Paul's truck battery to the transmitter as payment for the boy's life. Sheriff Ward called it a misunderstanding. He claimed Paul must have suffered an accident after leaving the search. Mara and I found his coat at the base of the radio tower. The sleeves were turned inside out. The pockets were filled with reservoir mud. His body was discovered 2 days later in a dry drainage pipe beneath the mine road. There was water in his lungs. The medical examiner estimated he drowned at 3:17, the exact minute Luke was pulled out alive. At Paul's funeral, Sheriff Ward told the family that mercy always had a price. No one asked who had agreed to pay it. Mara obtained a key to the transmitter after midnight. The building stood above the dam like a concrete chapel. Inside, 12 folding chairs formed a circle around an emergency broadcast console. Each chair faced a radio and a microphone. New copper cable climbed the walls in wet red coils. I recognized the donated parts by their county markings. The school bus garage had surrendered its backup battery after June Ward's warning. The mine rescue team had donated a pressure sensor after the boys were found. Luke's family brought Paul's truck battery. My mother had removed the North Flood relay herself. Every miracle had persuaded someone to dismantle a safety system and carry it to the same room. The equipment was not strengthening a radio signal. It was connecting the transmitter to Mercy Dam's emergency grid. In a cabinet beneath the console, Mara found a maintenance log dated April 1968. During a spring storm, the abandoned frequency had awakened for the first time. Residents heard relatives buried in the old Vale cemetery. 12 people entered the tower. At 3:17, the spillway gates opened without command and drowned the lower end of town. The final pages belonged to an engineer named Walter Crane. The voices know only what we give them. They ask questions to learn the dead. Do not answer. 12 witnesses created a closed circuit between grief, memory, and signal. Once the circuit was complete, the line could travel beyond the tower. The flood had not been an accident. It had created more dead voices and more grieving people willing to listen. Crane stopped the broadcast by cutting the transmitter cable. He was found with both eardrums ruptured and the cable burned into his hands. The final sentence was almost illegible. It cannot command what cannot hear it. A floorboard creaked behind us. Sheriff Ward stood in the doorway. He was holding my mother's notebook. "You shouldn't have brought Jonah home, Ruth," he said into the darkness behind him. My mother stepped into the room. She would not look at me. Ward locked the maintenance log inside the cabinet. Then he told us Paul Danner was not the first person the line had taken in exchange for a miracle. He was the 7th. Ward did not deny the deaths. He justified them. The first victim had been dying of liver failure. The second was a drifter no one could identify. Another had beaten his wife for 20 years. According to Ward, the line selected people already standing close to death and spent their remaining lives where they would do the most good. 22 children for one old mechanic, he said. 2 boys for a man sleeping beneath a bridge. Luke for Paul. Tell me which rescue you would undo. Mara asked whether the victims had volunteered. Ward smiled without warmth. Did the children volunteer to die? My mother said Emma promised the exchanges would end after Sunday. Once the line was fully open, no one would need to lose the dead again. I showed her Crane's warning. She tore the page from my hand. A frightened engineer wrote that 50 years ago. And 7 people are dead now. Emma is dead now. Her voice cracked. Do you understand the difference? That was when a radio on the console switched on. A little boy began singing through the static. Mara stopped breathing. The melody had only 4 notes. Caleb had invented it while playing with toy cars. Mara once told me he sang it whenever he was afraid.
Mommy?
The radio whispered. Mara fell to her knees.
Can you hear me?
I grabbed her before she answered. She fought hard enough to split my lip. Sheriff Ward watched us with the patience of a man who knew grief would eventually defeat strength.
Sunday,
Caleb said.
Please sit in the blue chair.
The radio went silent. Mara pulled away from me. If that was your sister, would you walk away? I told her I did not know. It was the truth, and the line heard me say it. Ward let us leave because he no longer considered either of us a threat. Outside, Mara promised she would help me stop the broadcast. But as we descended the hill, she kept looking back at the blue chair through the tower window. At home, every radio was waiting in my bedroom. My mother had arranged them around the bed. At 3:03, Emma said she was ready to tell me how she died. The official story was that a wall of floodwater swept Emma away while our mother drove us home from school. Emma told a different story. Mother had been leaving my father that night. She drove around a barricade because she feared he would catch them before they reached the state line. The car stalled in rising water. Mother escaped through the driver's window. Emma did not. I called it a lie. Mother entered the room and confessed. For 14 years, she had allowed me to believe I should have been in the car, that an older brother might have saved Emma. In reality, she had refused to take me because I defended Dad during their argument. The truth was cruel enough to make every word after it sound true. She let go of me, Emma whispered. Bring her to the tower. She can take my place. My mother closed her eyes. For one terrible moment, I wanted to do it. Then Emma asked, "Do you remember the tin fox?" Mother answered before I could. "I told her about it," she said. "The line asks me questions every night. It said memories helped Emma find her way back." The impossible secret had never come from Emma. It had come from my mother. I opened every recording on my laptop. June Ward, the miner, Paul, Caleb, and Emma. I removed their different pitches and aligned their breaths. Every voice inhaled on the same exact frame. Every tongue touched its teeth 11 times per second. There were no dead relatives inside the frequency. There was one mouth wearing all of them. It mixed real memories with precise lies, then waited for grief to finish the work. I called Mara and explained. She listened quietly and told me to meet her at the dam before the Sunday broadcast. Our plan was simple. The donated equipment fed the transmitter through the spillway control room. If I disconnected the tower and manually closed the gate circuit before 3:17, the line would collapse. At 2:50 Sunday morning, Mara met me beside the service entrance. She hugged me. Then she drove a syringe into my neck. As my legs failed, she lowered me gently to the concrete. "I believe you," she whispered. Tears ran down her face. "But Caleb only has 14 minutes. I woke tied to a pipe inside the spillway control room. Rain hammered the dam. Above me, 12 voices answered roll call in the transmitter. My mother was number 12. At 3:03, every speaker in the building turned on. The line did not sound like static anymore. It sounded like a stadium filled with people whispering beneath deep water. One by one, the dead called the witnesses by name. June called Sheriff Ward. Caleb called Mara. Emma called my mother. "Can you hear me?" One by one, the living answered yes. With every answer, a green light ignited on the spillway console. The stolen relays were completing the gate-open circuit. I cut my wrists against the edge of the pipe bracket until the plastic tie snapped. At 3:11, the first gate moved. Concrete groaned beneath my feet. Water thundered into the empty channel, aimed directly at Mercy Vale. I reached the manual control wheel, but new copper cable had been threaded through its spokes. The cable ran upward into the tower, carrying enough current to stop my heart. Mara entered the room. She was smiling and crying at the same time. "He remembers the song," she said. "He remembers the red truck. Jonah, it's him." I played the aligned recording through my phone. For a moment, every dead voice became the same wet inhalation. Mara's smile disappeared. Then Caleb screamed from the loudspeaker. "Mummy, don't let him kill me again!" She struck me with a wrench. I fell against the console. At 3:13, the second gate opened. Sheriff Ward came down carrying a revolver. He said the rising water was not a disaster. It was a baptism. Mercy Vale would provide the line with enough voices to reach every radio in America. "June has been alone for 8 years," he said. "My town can give her company." He aimed at me. My mother stepped between us. Emma was speaking through every speaker now, begging her to move. Mother looked at the open gates. Then she looked at me. "I already chose the dead over one child," she said. "I will not do it twice." Ward fired. The bullet entered Mother's side. Mara attacked him before he could fire again. They crashed against the railing. His revolver fell into the spillway channel, but Ward dragged Mara over the edge with him. They disappeared into the black water below. My mother collapsed beside the manual wheel. At 3:15, the final witness answered yes. The tower lights burned white. Every radio in Mercyvale began calling someone by name. Mother told me to cut the live cable. I wrapped my jacket around a fire axe and swung. The current threw me across the room. The cable remained intact. Emma laughed. Not like a child, like a mouth discovering how many speakers it possessed. The maintenance log returned to me. It cannot command what cannot hear it. Beside the console lay my field headphones and amplifier. I understood what Walter Crane had done in 1968. I put on the headphones. My mother realized before I switched on the microphone. She tried to stop me. I turned the amplifier to maximum and placed the microphone against the screaming loudspeaker. Feedback entered my skull like a white blade. The last sound I ever heard was my sister's voice saying she forgave me. Then the world became silent. I do not remember cutting the cable. I remember seeing the axe fall. I remember blue fire crawling over my hands without sound. I remember turning the manual wheel while blood ran from both ears. At 3:17, the spillway gates stopped. The lowest streets flooded, but the wall of water never reached the houses. The transmitter burned from the inside. Every radio in town split its speaker cone at the same moment. My mother survived the gunshot long enough to reach the hospital. She died before sunrise. Sheriff Ward's body was recovered below the dam. Mara's was never found. 7 months have passed. I cannot hear voices, traffic, rain, or my own breathing. I communicate by reading lips and using live captions on my phone. The county called the event an electrical malfunction made worse by unauthorized modifications. No one wanted a report explaining why half the town had carried those modifications uphill. The Mercy Line became something people remembered differently. Some called it mass hysteria. Some still believed the dead had offered a miracle that I destroyed. Luke Danner's family leaves flowers outside my apartment every month. Paul Danner's widow leaves nothing. I continue analyzing recordings. Silence has made me better at seeing patterns other people miss. 3 nights ago, I woke at 3:03 because my phone screen had turned white. The battery had died hours earlier. Live caption was running. Emma. Can you hear me? I did not touch the screen. The sentence disappeared. Another replaced it. Ruth. Jonah, please, it is dark here. For 14 minutes, the names of people lost at Mercy Dam scrawled across the glass. At 3:17, one final message appeared. We do not need your ears anymore. We only need an answer. I smashed the phone and buried the pieces in separate places. Yesterday, my television displayed the same question while unplugged. Tonight, the words appeared on my dark bedroom window, written in condensation from the other side. So if a dead person calls your name through a radio, a telephone, or a line of text that should not exist, remember what the people of Mercy Vale learned too late. The first miracle is how it earns your trust. The second is how it teaches you to obey. And the final miracle is convincing you that the voice wearing your loved one would ever let you say goodbye. The people of Mercy Vale were not foolish because they wanted one more conversation with the dead. They became dangerous when they decided someone else should pay for it. If the Mercy Line offered to save 22 children at the cost of one stranger, would you accept? And after accepting once, how many more lives would it take before you could no longer call it mercy? Share your answer in the comments. Thank you for listening to MC Noctis. If this story stays with you after the screen goes dark, please leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more scary stories, horror stories for sleep, creepypasta, dark folklore, and supernatural nightmares. Until our next night together, be careful which voices you answer, because grief can make any frequency sound like home. Good night. Somewhere at 3:03 in the morning, an empty radio is already breathing. It is only waiting for someone to say yes.